live on your tablet, phone, and the KUTV app. This is 2 News Live.
Hi everybody, thanks for joining us for 2 News Live. I'm Mark Cabell. It is Thursday, December 28th. We're going in depth tonight, but before we dive in, here's a look at some of the stories making headlines across the state and the country. Taylorsville police have arrested a woman on manslaughter charges after they found her uncle dead. Officers responded to the Mason's Landing apartments just before noon yesterday. Police say 55-year-old Kimberly Walwork had been taking care of her 66-year-old uncle Nicholas Walwork. Officers say she was giving her uncle illegal heroin injections, which they suspect ultimately killed him. Police say the state medical examiner will be working to try to determine the exact cause of death. Officials have now identified a body found on the campus of Salt Lake Community College's South City campus Wednesday night. It's a 37-year-old man who police say lived in the area. According to UHP investigators, they've not found any evidence of foul play. It's not believed the man was a student or had any ties to Salt Lake Community College. Police still trying to figure out how that man died. The home where 4 University of Idaho students were killed last November reduced to rubble today. The private owner of that house donated it to the University of Idaho following the murders of 4 people. The school has said it plans to create a memorial garden on the site to honor those 4 students who were murdered. In just a few days, a bunch of new laws will take effect in Utah. Starting January 1st, online dating services must provide certain safety notifications and disclosures to users. A non-refundable child tax credit program also starts registering. And your car will get more expensive. Rates are going up by $7 per vehicle. The gas tax will also go down slightly, so that might offset some of the cost. And counties can exempt a motor vehicle from an emissions inspection under certain circumstances. All those going into law after the first of the year. All right, as we go in depth tonight, you can always get in touch with us during the show. You can use the hashtag 2NewsLive if you'd like to join in on the conversation. Well, after pleading guilty to child abuse charges, the next question now being asked by a lot of people, how long could Ruby Frankie and Jodi Hilderbrand spend in jail? Part of their plea deal was prison time. Some legal analysts say it'll be at least another 3 years before either woman might be free. Paul Nelson has been following the case for us. And Paul, there are some sentencing guidelines here, and you talked about it earlier. This comes down to kind of like a math equation, right?
Very much so. There is a algorithm, if you will. There's a matrix, as it's officially called, but it's from the Utah Sentencing Commission, and they do basically look at your criminal history to see where the baseline is, where they can start calculating the minimum time. Now, in this particular case, the absolute minimum for a second-degree felony would be 18 months in prison. But here's the situation. After that, each consecutive charge would, Frankie and Hildebrandt would only have to serve 40% of all of those on each individual charge. Now, they agreed to do that consecutively, so 18 months for the first child abuse charge. Then after that, they'll add another 22. So basically, the minimum sentence that they could serve is just shy of 40 months, which is just shy of 3 years and 4 months. Now, that is the minimum time. Of course, if you look at a lot of the comments online, a lot of people are saying that there is no such thing as enough time behind bars. That's the sentiment that a lot of people have. However, the minimum time that they could have is 3 years and 4 months, and then after that, it's up to the parole board to decide whether or not they need to be released from prison or if they're ready to at all.
Yeah, we know that some of those charges are pretty disturbing. Does it look like they'll both get about the same amount of time? Is that what you're hearing?
From what we're hearing, there's one big difference is that in the Hilderbrand case, the prosecutors decided that they were not going to stay neutral when it comes to parole hearings in the future. They did decide to stay neutral for Ruby Franke, though, because she's the one that agreed to testify against Hilderbrand. Now, in this case, what the parole board does, they will look at several things before they make any consideration as to release. One, they'll look to see if the inmate actually can control their own behavior. They need to check to see if there's any risk to public safety at all, and also just if they finish the programs that they're required to finish while they're in prison. Now, and then after that, they'll get victim impact statements, and they will will get, if they receive any information from county attorneys, that could be added as well. So from what it looks like, there could be a little bit more information in the information that's given to the parole board from the county attorney in Hildebrandt's case than Frankie's. But still, again, the parole board is going to look at all those factors to decide whether or not somebody is ready to get out. And also, the person has to have a plan to re-enter society before the parole board will let them be released from prison.
All right, Paul, before we let you go, what about the children? Will Ruby Franke ever get her children back? What's the answer to that?
There's no rule that will prevent Ruby Franke from ever getting her children back or communicating with her kids in the future. Now, there's not a rule that prevents that, but here's the situation. Officials say that it is up to the children to decide whether or not they will allow communication with their mother ever again. And if that happens, these women will have to be watched very closely by Child and Family Services, and they'll have to basically earn their way to have their communication with the kids ever again. But realistically, the kids will decide if they want to have any kind of communication with their mother.
All right, Paul, thank you very much. Of course, this has been a developing story. We've been following it for months now. If you'd like to see Frankie and Hildebrandt's full court hearings, we posted both of those, the entire unedited videos of those hearings on our KUTV YouTube page. You can also find past videos like interviews with family members and those who say they've been impacted by either Frankie or Hildebrandt. All you need to do is click on the 8 Passengers playlist. That's the 8 Passengers playlist. All right, let's talk a little bit of weather. Some people, especially skiers, hoping for some more snow up in the mountains, Trent, but that's not likely to happen any day soon.
No, it doesn't look like it. And we're showing video from California. This is the California coast. Super dangerous surf conditions with some high winds as that storm kind of just batters California. And it's really not going to be moving in onshore into Utah anytime soon. So we are looking at kind of a boring forecast over the next 7 days or so, kind of just grasping at straws to see if we get any kind of flurries or rain showers moving in.
And that would clean our air a little bit. It's starting to get gunky again.
Yes,
so.
It is. It certainly is. So we could use a little bit of a reset. We need a storm. That's plain and simple. Okay. We just need a couple more storms to roll through because we're not doing so hot right now. Speaking of not doing so hot, here's the snowpack right now. Yeah, southern Utah could really use some snow. Down in the 30s% for your snow water equivalent for this time of year. Up north, we're not doing all that terribly. Some of the resorts here in northern Utah are bolstering some of these 70% of median numbers with their own man-made snow. So it's actually, the skiing conditions are pretty good right now, especially since it's been pretty cold over the last couple of days. Those conditions have stayed pretty fresh. Western snowpack not doing well either. In fact, we're doing the best out of the western states, Colorado following just behind us, as well as New Mexico, but most states really seeing a really terrible start to the season, under 50% in Oregon and California, as they've dealt with these dry spells as well as these warm and moist storms that put more rain up in the mountains than any kind of snow. We're dealing with high pressure here across the state of Utah. So like I said, we're just kind of grasping at straws here. A couple clouds move in tomorrow afternoon. This is Friday afternoon through Saturday morning, and here's that storm, and as it works its way onshore, it kind of just completely fizzles out. It loses all kind of forcing, and we do see it maybe a potential chance for a couple scattered showers there, mostly in southern Utah as we wrap up the weekend and then head into the new year. 58 tomorrow in St. George, turns to 57 on Saturday, and then we cool things off just a little bit back towards normal down in St. George as we head into the new year with just some cloudy skies. And here in Salt Lake City, we are dealing with that haze, the pollution here in the valleys, and we'll be dealing with it. In fact, it's going to get worse through the weekend and into Sunday. Into the new year, we'll expect those temperatures to cool off into the lower 40s with just some partly cloudy skies. And then I do want to bring up that ski resort forecast for the next 7 days. It's actually going to be pretty mild this weekend up in the mountains. We're looking at those daytime highs in the 30s, and then eventually cooling off just a little bit as we get a little bit of some colder air moving in ahead of us.
All right, well, we'll see what happens. We got the holiday coming up this weekend, so it'd be nice if we had a little bit of extra snow for the skiers, but I think we'll get through it.
Yeah, it's not bad.
All right, thanks, Trent, appreciate it. Hey, remember to download our 2 News weather app. About any changes to weather in your neighborhood, it's real easy to do, and to download the app is free as well. Live radar right at your fingertips, right on your mobile device. You can also check the specific weather for wherever you are at any particular moment. That's the 2 News weather app, and again, it's free to download. All right, more investigators at the site of that Orem mansion fire. The team on the ground today, including members of federal and state fire agencies. Our Brian Malahy live in Orem. He's been there most of the day today. Brian, you also asked the city about a long construction project at this property that never really seemed to ever get finished. Did they give you any statement about that today?
They gave us a statement late today about it, didn't answer all of our questions. Essentially, the city says it has been trying to work with the property owner since 2014 to get the project done. But this was essentially a shell. I mean, there were some, there were some fixtures and some finishes inside the building, but the city says, look, ultimately there was a certificate of non-occupancy for this structure. It hasn't been lived in for some time. There have been some concerns apparently expressed to the city, but it raises more questions. For instance, were necessary building permits achieved, or were they approved by the city for this project? What about inspections? How many inspections were done here? Was any of the work inspected? And what about sprinklers? Were there supposed to be sprinklers for the project? And why didn't the project get done? What was it exactly that didn't, for some reason, held this whole thing up? I mean, these are questions that, in light of this intense investigation, seem to matter. And you mentioned it, Mark, you had federal and state investigators on scene, also local investigators here today. So this is a police, fire, state fire marshal, Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives investigation. I asked the question today, is it an arson investigation? And we're going to have more about that coming up on 2 News at 6. You'll hear the answer from the assistant fire chief, the spokesman for the fire department. How he couches that, coming up.
All right, Brian, before we let you go, there's been some discussion about who actually owned the house. Do we know exactly who owns the house right now?
According to the records that are produced on the MLS that come from the county, they're owned by an LLC, so Dixon Properties LLC. The registered agent for Dixon Properties LLC is Catherine Dixon. I've tried to reach her. I was told by the co-listing agent for the property, so this property has been on the market over and over again in the last 8 years, sometimes for stretches a year or longer. So most recently it went on the market in November, and then it was withdrawn, the day after the fire happened here. So we have been told that Tom Dixon, who is said to be the son of Tom Dixon Sr., who is the founder of Blendtec, a very popular kitchen appliance company based in Utah County, is the owner. So the Dixon family, members of the Dixon family, own this property. Catherine may have an ownership interest. Tom Dixon Jr. may have an ownership interest, but they seem to be the principals at this point.
All right, Brian, thank you very much. All we do know is there's still a lot of unanswered questions about that fire, and we'll continue to keep an eye on it. If you'd like to see more pictures, we posted them to our gallery on the website, KUTV.com. And if you'd like to go in depth, we posted viewer videos of the fire on our 2 News YouTube page. You can see them there as well. Americans may have to wait a few more years before astronauts actually return to the moon. It's been more than half a century since astronauts last landed on the moon during the Apollo 17 mission. Now it seems the long-anticipated return with an Artemis 3 crew might take a little longer than hoped.
The Government Accountability Office said it's more likely to slip into 2026, maybe 2027, because of supply chain problems and trouble developing SpaceX's new Super Heavy rocket, the upper stage of which is going to be the moon lander. They haven't gotten that perfected yet, and that's going to take some time.
Well, the moon mission had been tentatively set for December 2025 when astronauts finally returned. NASA has announced plans to explore the region near the moon's south pole for the very first time. We'll keep you posted on that. And a reminder, you can find KUTV 2 News live on your phone, your tablet, your computer. You can stream our newscasts on the KUTV mobile app. You can find us on the Stir app, the News On app, and of course on YouTube. They're all free to download in the Apple App Store, or you can find them on Google Play. I want to thank everybody for watching. Trent, thanks for being here and getting us through the weather. Appreciate that. You can see us live every day at 5:30 right here on the YouTube channel, and we'll see you next time around.